Hi everyone, it's Monica, and welcome back to Tailor-Made Cards for You. Well, yesterday I shared with you the process of creating some rust on some watercolor cardstock, and that was just basically just a background that you can turn into anything. And I'm using the voltage die from Tim Holtz, and we're going to go ahead and finish off the project, and then I'm going to actually create a couple of projects using the piece that we're creating today. So the first thing that I did is I'm going to go ahead and finish off the voltage. What is it called? I guess it's called a plate, the voltage plate. So I had some cardstock that had some background that kind of looked like a brick, and I'm just using a piece from the it's from the Scientist kit. I'm not sure exactly what the name is, but I'll make sure that I link it below when I add all of the products that I've used. But I'm just kind of adding some background just to give it a little bit of interest. A lot of it isn't going to show up because I am going to put that rusty part that we created yesterday right in the middle. But I didn't want it to just be a plain brick wall, so that's why I decided to add some interest. There's a lot of things that you could probably do to add interest. You can certainly add script, letters, anything just to give a little bit more interest to the background. Certainly we don't want it to be plain. I mean, I guess it would work plain, but I definitely like to have a lot going on my cards, so that's why I decided to go ahead and add that scribbly words behind the voltage plate. And then I'm going to go ahead and take those bolts that we created yesterday, and I'm going to add those to the corners. And as you can see, this plate comes together pretty easily. I mean, at this point, there's a lot you can do with it. You can put it on a card, you can put it on a project. There's so many possibilities for this. Now I am going to do a few final touches. We did have the arm that goes on the meter, and I didn't want it to necessarily be rusty. I wanted it to be red because I wanted it to stand out. So I just took some fired brick distress paint to it, and we're going to go ahead and dry that up and also add that to the gauge. Now, if you didn't catch the video yesterday, I would encourage you to kind of stop and go back and check that out, because that's where I walked through the whole process of creating the grunge background. And at this point, we're just putting it together. And as you can see, I did speed up the video with just a little bit, so that way we don't have to sit through it. Most of the process that we did was yesterday, and I wanted it to be in real time, so you can kind of see exactly what I did to create the background. But at this point, we're just pretty much putting it together, so I decided to go ahead and speed it up and do a voiceover. Now this is going to be a Valentine project, so I took a small heart punch that I had, and I punched out a little heart off of the leftover rust background that I had, and then I'm going to go ahead and just edge it up a little bit with looks like I'm using fired brick and the Daubers. So I'm going to go ahead, or maybe it was Red Barn, I'm not really sure. But all of the colors that I've used pretty much are for the background. I have all these on my desk, but any red would work. I just want to edge up the heart. And then I'm just I took a little round foam dot, and I added it in the middle to kind of finish off the voltage plate. Now, to attach the meter arm, I just used a simple brad, and I did want to grunge it up a little bit, and I took some distress paint to it as well. But I just took a simple hole punch, and I punched through the arm gauge. I think I was trying to do both of them at the same time, but I went ahead and I punched the hole through the plate as well as the arm, and then I'm just using a simple brad to attach. And I think the brad actually looks like some sort of a screw, or some sort of a not really sure where exactly I got it, but it definitely is a brad. It's in my stash, and I am using this because it did look like a screw, and it kind of added to the design. And I couldn't find my tweezers, so you see that I'm trying to dry it without touching it, because any metal piece is going to be really hot when you actually take your heating tool to it. So you just want to be careful with that. The best choice, obviously, is to use some tweezers, but I couldn't find them. If you would see my desk when I actually am creating, especially projects like these, it is a mess. So I just couldn't find my tweezers, and I ended up using a binding clip to hold it, just so I wouldn't burn my fingers. But you know what? We have imagination and we're creative, so we're going to use whatever is around us. And that just happened to be right on my desk, so I grabbed it, and it worked fine. And I just went ahead and I dried it up, and I used it to attach the arm for my gauge. Now, once you finish your gauge, like I said, there's a lot of things you can do with it. You can create a card. You can add it to a journal page. There are so many options. But honestly, when I go through so much trouble to create an extravagant piece like this, I really don't want to put it on a card. I want to put it on something that maybe I can hang on the wall or give away as a gift. I just think it might be wasted on a card. But that's just me. I mean, it certainly would work on a card, but I wanted to go ahead and do a project. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take these two voltage plates that we created, and we're going to add them to a project. Okay, so here's the two pieces that I ended up with. One of them was, of course, the one I did off camera, just to kind of test my design. And then the second one was the one that we just created. And we're going to go ahead and put these on the oversized wood tags that Tim Holtz has. And I have a medium-sized one and I have a smaller one. And they're going to be similar designs, but both a little bit different. And that's what I want to share with you today. I know a lot of times I create these off camera, and that's because it takes me so much time to kind of think of my design, how I want to put it together. And it's a little bit more difficult to do these on camera. But I went ahead and I designed it off camera, and then I'm going to go ahead and put it together. So as you can see, on the back, I went ahead and I just added some stain. It's more of a cardboard color when you start out with, and I added some stain on the back. And you can use vintage photo, you can use walnut stain. I think I used brush corduroy, but any of those brown tones would be great. And then for the top side, for the bigger one, I used the abandoned paper stack that Tim Holtz came out with over Halloween. And then the one on the right corner of my screen, I used the really deep embossing plates, and I'm using the gears. And then for the one that I'm working on right now, I went ahead and took two pieces of grunge board and I glued them together, and then I added another piece of the abandoned paper, so that way I would have some layers. And then from there, as you can see, I put my gauge, my voltage plate right in the middle. I'm adding a ruler at the bottom, and then I'm going to use that electrical tag right on top, so it's kind of coming together. Now for that metal tag, I'm just using one of my piercing tools to add a couple of holes, and then I want to say that I used my hole punch for this to add the holes. I'm just working with grunge paper, so it's not really thick, and it was easy to punch a hole through. But I first wanted to go ahead and just dress up my metal piece. And you can do this after you put it on your paper or beforehand. Either way, I mean, I didn't want to take the chance of actually getting the paint on my background, so that's why I decided to go ahead and do it before I added it. And I'm not completely covering it. I'm just adding some rusty hinge. I'm coming in with some fired brick, I believe, just a little bit of color to grunge it up a bit, so that way it does match the background. And then I'm going to go ahead and dry it, and then I'll add it to that middle piece where we had it laid on top of a few seconds ago. Now remember, guys, this is just one idea. What I would recommend, is just kind of playing with your stash, figure out what kind of ideology you have that would work. And just kind of play with it. The hardest part was putting together the voltage plate, honestly. Now it's just a matter of working with your stash, figuring out what you have, and putting it together. This is a electrical kind of a grunge theme, so I just kind of went with that throughout, and that's why I decided to pull out that ruler. The little electrical plate worked really well. And then I wanted it to be kind of like a love meter. So I added some letters as well that you'll be seeing here in just a minute. Now, one of the things that I'm really bad at, and I don't know if you have this problem as well, is when I buy my Idea-Ology, I tend to, it ends up all in different drawers, and I really need to keep it together, because when I actually go to put these projects together, I want to pull from different Idea-Ology items. I knew that I had the metal plates, so that wasn't a big deal. And I thought that I had the rollers, but I actually ended up running to Joann's really quickly to pick those up, and I lucked out. I mean, you probably know that Tim Holtz just came out with his new line for 2020, so I was really lucky, and a lot of the Idea-Ology over at Joann's Fabrics was on clearance, so I kind of stocked up. And I love the new product, don't get me wrong. I'm probably going to invest in some of the new Idea-Ology because the Idea-Ology is my favorite. But if I can get a bargain on some of the other items, I'm definitely going to jump on that, because you can mix and match some of your stuff here. And you're going to see at the end of the video, I am using some old pieces. The letters that I used, you can still get on Amazon, I believe, but you can't get it in any of the scrapbook shops, because I believe it is discontinued. So I've got my electrical metal tag attached, and now we're going to go ahead and add the voltage plate that we used. And as you can see, the color combinations are really coming together. The background is great, and if you haven't used the abandoned stack paper that came out in Halloween, it's a fantastic stack. And Tim said that they're going to make it a regular stack. It's not going to just be a holiday paper stack. So I was really happy about that, because it creates some fantastic backgrounds without having to create them on your own. So I had a couple of choices as far as my letters, and I was going to originally use the brown ones, and then when I went to Joann's, I saw these other ones at the bottom, and when I saw them, I knew I had to get them, not only because I thought they would be perfect for the project, but of course because they were on clearance. So that kind of put me over the edge as far as my decision. But I really think that the love meter works, and then I also wanted to finish it off with a little brass handle at the very top. So when you are, putting your design together, definitely lay it out. It took me a few tries to figure out exactly what I was going to do, and I didn't necessarily go through that process on camera. I did my thought process off camera, and then when I turned on the camera to tape this, I already knew what my design was going to be. And then I went ahead and, like I said, I glued down my letters. And the top bar, I'm going to actually have to do off screen, but I'm just going to basically glue it and screw it in with some bolts to get it to stick. And that pretty much will do it. I did decide after the fact to actually add some little charms at the bottom. So make sure you stick around at the end, because you're going to be able to see the completely finished project that I did on this. But I wanted to put some sort of charms. I thought it would be kind of cool to maybe have tickets come out, because it is a love meter, but I couldn't really figure out how to do that. So instead I just put some charms at the bottom, and I think it says like love and lucky, just charms that would be good for a love meter. And that's kind of how I finished it off. So I'm going to go ahead and start on the new project. And while we're still going to be using the voltage plate as our focal point, it's going to be a completely different look. It's not going to necessarily be a Valentine Day project, but more of just like a steampunky type of a thing, because I am using the background that has those gears. So I'm going to put this love meter tag aside, and we're going to go ahead and get started on our project that has the gear background. All right, so like I did on the first tag, I went ahead and I did the background before I actually turned on the camera. And this is one of those 3D plates. I'm just using some of the metallic cardstock, and the back side is Kraft. The front side is silver. They also have it in gold. And I went ahead and I used the 3D gear plate, and I ran it through my Big Shot to get this result. And then I just took some of my glue, I added it to the tag, and then I just started using some of my crayons, some of my paint, to grunge it up. Now, the one thing about this is I was trying stain a little bit, and the stain didn't really stick too well, so you may have some problems with that. So you're going to want to probably stick to the paints, the crayons, probably the inks, but you may have to dry those. But I found the paints and the crayons really work the best for this type of a surface. And then, as you can see, I'm just kind of adding colors here and there, and then I'm using my cloth to smear it in, just to create some sort of a grunge background. And I would just kind of keep playing with it until you're happy with your background. And then once you kind of get the look that you're desiring, then just maybe take your heating tool to do a once over to kind of set your medium. And then at this point, we can go ahead and we can start putting our tag together. Now, this is a smaller tag, so we're not going to be putting any words or letters on it. We're just going to basically design it up to be somewhat of a grungy steampunk look. So again, I am going in with one of the handles. I'm going to have one of the number tags, and then my voltage plate is going to be right in the middle. Now, when I was playing with this design, I also decided to actually bring in some of my cogs to go ahead and add those to the plate as well. And this is why it's really important to not glue anything until you're actually completely happy with the design. You can see I played around with it a lot. And when I was finally happy with the way it was going to look, then I went ahead and started attaching things. Now, I didn't want to necessarily add brads to this Exhibit A word plate. I wanted to get some wiring to wrap around it, and the little kit that I showed you was actually a picture hanging kit, and I'm using the wire off of that. I do have some metal wires somewhere in my craft room, but I couldn't find it for the life of me. So I knew exactly where this picture hanging kit was, and that's what I decided to use. And I tried to do it on camera, but again, a lot of these techniques are a little difficult to do on camera. But as you can see, I just kind of wrapped the wire around inside the hole, wrapped around the back, and that's for the most part what's holding it together. And then I did try to add some glue just so the Exhibit A wouldn't slide off. But you're going to see in a minute here where I actually use some of those cogs to kind of use it for a base underneath it to hold it in place. And again, I'm bringing out the binder clips. As you can see, those binder clips really come in handy, especially if you want to keep working on your project. You can just kind of snap those on, and they will hold your item in place while you're working on the rest of your project. Now, for some of you that have been following me for a while, you know that I am a pretty big Tim Holtz fan. I have a lot of his product. I have been following him for a while. Never really have taken a class with him before, but I used to play along with his 12 tags monthly projects he used to have, and of course I was always in awe with all of the projects. I mean, one of my lifelong dreams, of course, would be to be able to design for him for some of his events, but there are so many talented crafters out there. I know that you think that based on your comments, I mean, of course, some of you have said, you know, that you think I do a really good job, but there are so many more talented crafters out there, but I don't find a lot of detailed process videos like I'm doing here. So I really wanted to break it down for you and show you that a lot of it is just playing with it. It's just kind of playing with your product, figuring out what works, knowing what combinations to work. Like I said, when you're kind of making a rust background, you want to work with your browns, your reds, and your yellows. And just the combination of those, you'll be able to create some fantastic backgrounds. So while I'll probably never be a designer for Tim, I can certainly share with you my process and just enjoy the process of creating. And that'll just have to be good enough for me. So another thing, when I am attaching my metal elements, as you can see, even though I know I'm going to be using brads, some of the brads are just for show. Those brads that I just put on that metal plate really didn't go through the tag. I just put them on and then I glued them down. But I did want the result to look like it was attached, but those are just being held. The plate is just being held in place with some glue. And after I took off that clip, I found that the Exhibit A was still a little loose. So I decided to add some of those cogs underneath it just to help stabilize it. And then that way I can add some glue to the top of the cog, and the glue and the metal band were able to have a little bit more, they were able to touch, basically. They didn't have a big gap, and that was able to help it stay in place. So I did that with that bigger cog, and then you're going to see here in a minute, I did add that smaller one as well, just to give it somewhat of a base to rest on. So again, when you're putting together your projects, if something isn't working, just modify it. Just figure out exactly what the problem is, and then modify it as you go along. Now, I have to say I really enjoyed putting these projects together. It's been kind of a while since I've sat down and created some projects like this. These took all day, I have to tell you, because I had to do the background. Part of it is because I was taping as well, so I wanted to make sure that I captured my process. But I really enjoyed putting these projects together, and I was glad that I was able to capture it for you on camera so you can see my process. And, you know, if you're like me and you just love creating and just the joy of putting something together, as a vintage inspired crafter, I hope that some of the techniques and the processes that I shared with you today will help you and encourage you to give it a try. I by no means am an expert. A lot of it is just trial and error, but I wanted to show you what your end result can be if you just kind of take the time to practice, put together some of these techniques and color combinations that I've shared with you, and just give it a try. You know, don't be scared to practice and put it together. So be sure to stick around to the end of the video. I am going to give you some close-up shots of my finished project, and I want to be able to show you a picture of the finished tag, the first tag that has those little charms, because it really did come out cute. And I hope to put these tags in my shop, Tailor-Made Cards for You, because I don't typically keep what I make. A lot of it is just for practice. And I put my finished projects in my shop, which enables me to buy more product to be able to bring you more videos. While a lot of the products that I used today were some of his old products, I certainly want to be able to bring you some more videos using some of his new products. The Idea-Ology line is fantastic, so I'm really excited to get my hands on some of that stuff and create some projects for you. So as always, I'll leave a list of all the products that I've used to create these, along with the links to the store. And if you've enjoyed my video, I would really appreciate a thumbs up and a share for my video as well. And don't forget, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. All right, everybody, I hope that you've enjoyed my process video, and we'll see you again next time.